Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. We are in the wake of a rash of mass shootings, many of them in schools. So how are schools dealing with the threat? Nancy Kislin is a psychotherapist and parental counselor. She is author of the book Lockdown, Talking to Your Kids About School Violence, which I'm told is about to come out. It's not out yet, so we're getting you early. I know you've done a lot of research on this, and you've even gone down to Parkland, Florida, the scene of one of those shootings. How are kids feeling? Have you been talking to them? Are they afraid?
Yes. I have been talking to hundreds of kids in the last 6-7 months. And what I found is a lot of kids will first, when I ask the question, like, how are you doing with your lockdown drills? And they'll say, oh, fine, fine, a lot of kids. And then if I ask the question again in a different way or more specific, oh, do you have evacuation drills or active shooter drills? They'll become engaged and start to tell me. And one little boy I remember talking to, he was 11, and I always ask permission for the parents. And I prefer the parent to be present when I interview the child because I think it's really important for the parent to know what the kid is experiencing. Yeah. And so I said, the same question you just asked me, and he said, I'm okay, I'm really okay with it. It's Mom, it's Susie, she was so upset, do you know?
Well, they deflect. Mm-hmm. And so they're actually afraid, but they want to say that others are, that they're not.
And he went as far as, well, she was crying, so I held her hand, and together we hid in the cubby together. And by the time I finished talking with this mother and this son, the mother was holding the child and tears coming down her face saying, I had no idea, I had no idea. And I asked for clarification saying, you didn't know there were lockdown drills? And she said, of course I do, because the schools let the parents know. Where I found the breakdown to be was that parents didn't specifically know what was happening to that child.
It's interesting, it's fascinating to me that you are centering in on these lockdown drills because that is the reaction to these school shootings. The schools feel like they have to protect their children, they have to know what to do in case it happens to them. But that in and of itself, if they don't handle it correctly, they're scaring their children even more.
Right, and what I found from talking to many different districts, school districts across the country was there's no, this is the way to do it. Even in our area in New Jersey, you can go within a 5-mile radius and find private schools do it one way, high schools do it a different way. And what I found the biggest discrepancy, if you want to say, is that some schools say it's a drill and others don't at all. So that means that, for example, where I live in Short Hills, we have a policy where we don't let the children know that it's a drill. Because the feeling behind it has been, as far as I could tell from everybody I've talked to and read, is that the feeling is you want the child to practice the worst case scenario.
But aren't you causing fear?
That's my premise. My premise is we are traumatizing children over and over again. And granted, maybe not every child is traumatized, but what is trauma? You know, we say there's big T's in our life, the big traumas, and there's the small T's. We don't know the baggage. We don't know the history of each of that child in that classroom. So we don't know which child is going to have a larger reaction. What we do know is there's a rise of anxiety and depression and suicide and self-harming and addictive behaviors.
From the lockdowns?
No, but this generation of children aren't doing very well across the board. I believe that our kids, and I've talked to so many other colleagues and psychiatrists, that we're raising a generation of children who are particularly not resilient, and they don't have like sort of that toughness, like, okay, I'm gonna get through that. And then layer that on top of, okay, now every month, by the way, we're gonna scare you and you don't know if this is the real thing
Every
or not.
month, if you do it every month, after a while, it's a sky is falling scenario. I mean, after a while, you get used to it and you may not take it as seriously.
Well, that is one of the risks, and that's actually something I heard from some of the students at Parkland when I went down and interviewed some of the kids. They had a different protocol, this is before the shooting, that they didn't have that many drills. So they had never taken it that seriously, and there was a lot of, there would have been commotion anyway. But one of the most striking things that I've found is sort of the residual effects, if that is fair to say, is that The girls that I met with, a particular group of girls down in Florida, they told me, you never go to the bathroom alone. Like in Parkland, nobody goes to the bathroom.
Why?
Because, and I asked them that, is what if you go to the bathroom and there's a lockdown or a shooter? And they said, when two girls looked at me and they said, I don't want to die alone. I don't want to die alone, Nancy. And I just,
It's amazing that this is top of mind, because the chances of you being involved in a school shooting still are slim.
Exactly.
But if you live with that fear, it's going to affect your
Right.
life.
And that is such an important point, because when I talk to parents, my whole message in the book is to empower parents of what can you do in this time of lockdown.
Because it has to be on the parents. It's obviously not going to be on the schools, it sounds like. Is there a right way for a school to do this?
Well, I have some tips of helping, but the biggest thing right now, I think, is communication. And that, you know, my hope is to raise a much larger conversation about how do we take care of our children's mental well-being as well as their physical. And it's horrific that we have to worry about school shootings the way we do, but I'm raising the question of who's looking at the emotional. Who's looking at the emotional? The little girl who tells her mom she won't go to the bathroom at school because she's terrified that there'll even be a drill. And one young man I interviewed, is 14, and he won't go to the bathroom either because apparently in his school there's a flyer that's posted on the back of each stall, and it gives instructions on how to proceed during a lockdown drill.
It's fascinating. The whole subject is fascinating, that in trying to protect, as you say, the physical being, we might be harming the mental being. And we'll learn more about that, and I'll get your tips when we all read your book. So I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nancy Kislin is a psychotherapist and parental counselor. She is author of the book coming out soon, Lockdown, Talking to Your Kids About School Violence. Jersey Matters continues after this. Still to come on Jersey Matters, barter used to be the way to do business. It's making a comeback. We'll explain when Jersey Matters continues.